you from God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Looking at our Old Testament reading today from Isaiah, and these are verses that are very familiar. In fact, you pretty much all know them. They're some of the most well-known verses in the Old Testament. But to fully appreciate these verses, we need to put them into context, because if we just look at the verses, just look at what they say, golly, that may not make a lot of sense. Especially when you look at what Isaiah says, and then you read our gospel readings about Matthew, from Matthew, that talks about how these verses in Isaiah actually apply to Jesus. What's this about? So you put this into context. One of the ways, in fact, the first thing we do to help put this into context is we actually have to put the whole Old Testament into context. We just want to take a minute to review how the whole Old Testament is set up. Now, I know that, I'm sure you all know this anyway, but it never hurts just to review a little bit. The Old Testament books are not in chronological order. So the Old Testament is not one long narrative from Genesis to Malachi. It's not the way it works. Genesis and Exodus are chronological. They tell a narrative. They talk about from creation of the world to the exodus of God's people from slavery in Egypt and their adventures wandering in the wilderness. Then come the books of Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. These books are not chronological. These books, with the exception of the last chapter or two of Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, all are things that take place inside the book of Exodus. You can pluck these up and stick them inside the book of Exodus, and that would be correct. They're not chronological. The end of Deuteronomy, Joshua and Judges, goes back to being chronological again, a straight history. And they talk about what happened with God's people after they entered the Promised Land. After the book of Judges comes the book of Ruth. Ruth is a narrative that takes place inside the time of Judges. You can take the whole book of Ruth and stick it in the middle of the book of Judges, and you'd be fine. You're not moving anything out of order. Then comes 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings, and we're back to being chronological again, a straight line history of the telling of God's people. After the book of 2nd Kings. All of the books of the Old Testament after the books of 2nd Kings, with the exception of the book of Job, which if you're going to place Job chronologically, Job would actually be back between chapters 11 and 12 of Genesis. But all those other books in the Old Testament are all not chronological, and all of those other writings would actually go into the books of 1st and 2nd Kings. That's where they actually occur. Make sense? Clear as mud? All right. If you'd really like to get into this, if this is something that, wow, this is just fascinating. They actually write Bibles, and you can actually buy a chronological Bible where it takes all the events in the Bible and puts them in order of the events as they actually happened. If you were to do that, and I own one, if you were to do that, you start off reading the Bible, you go from Genesis 1 to Genesis 5, Genesis chapter 5, and then all of a sudden, you'd get entries from the book of 1st Chronicles, which is the 13th book in the Old Testament, right after Genesis 5. Then you get back on track, you'd start reading, you get to Genesis chapter 11, you'd read through Genesis 11, then all of a sudden the entire book of Job would be right there. And then you'd go to Genesis chapter 12. That's how chronologically it works. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. I hope I just didn't ruin anybody's Old Testament, but keep that in mind, just kind of set that off to the side. The second thing that we have to understand with the context of these verses from Isaiah is what's actually, again, going on at that time. Because if you just read the words, it might not make a lot of sense. God invites someone to ask him for a sign. He says, for anything you want, you ask me anything you want, I'm going to give it to you, to prove to you something to you. Ahaz says, no, I'm not going to ask you for a sign, I'm not going to test you, and God gets mad. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? Aren't we supposed to not test God? How come God got mad? What's going on here? And what is all this about the two kings and a child eating curds and honey? If this is supposed to be a prophecy about Jesus, the coming Messiah, where in the world do these things fit in? It doesn't make sense if you just look at the words without anything else. But here's the context. Here's how this works, and this is why it's so important to remember that the Old Testament is not a chronological narrative. The book of Isaiah, the ministry of Isaiah, which incidentally is the 23rd book of the Old Testament, occurs during the time of the history, the chronological writing of 2 Kings, which is the 12th book in the Old Testament. It's when we go back to the 12th book, 2 Kings, when Isaiah's ministry actually took place, we find out what's going on. And what we find out is that these are really anxious days for the nation of Judah. Remember, you had Israel, the one country, then they split. You had Israel to the north, Judah to the south. What's going on is that the international powerhouse of the day, the nation of Assyria, the Assyrian Empire, is advancing against the northern kingdom of Israel. And in response, the king of Israel has made an alliance, a political and military alliance, with the king of another country against Assyria. And these two kings were pressuring Judah and pressuring King Ahaz of Judah to join their alliance. What did our reading say? The land of the two kings you dread will be laid to waste. The two kings are the kings of Israel and this other king. Here's the thing, though. Ahaz refused to do it and said, I'm not going to join their alliance. But it's again, when we go back to 2 Kings, we find out why. He refused to join the alliance because he had already had and put into motion a secret plan to save the nation of Judah from Assyria. He was playing political games. And what he did was made a treaty with the nation of Assyria behind everybody else's back. He went to the nation of Assyria and made a treaty. This is where the reading picks up today. If you back up just a couple of verses in Isaiah, put it in words of today, let's put all this together. God, speaking through Isaiah, basically says to King Ahaz of Judah, Ahaz, listen. These two countries that formed an alliance, Israel and this other country, that are pressuring you, they're not going to be an issue for you. And I'm going to prove it to you. I want to prove this to you. I want to prove to you that I will defend Judah against Assyria. So to prove it, you ask me anything you want. For anything you want, I'm going to give it to you. You do not have to do this. You're not going to save yourself. You're not going to save Judah through your political maneuverings and political games. I've got this. You ask me for anything. And that's what Isaiah said. I'll not do it. I'll not put the Lord to the test. And it sounds so good and it sounds so right. But that's not what was going on. It wasn't good and right. The truth is, Isaiah himself may not have known this at the time. Ahaz had already gone outside of God's will. He'd already made a plan, and he'd already put that plan into action without consulting God at all. That's the context. Let's stop with that for a second. It's really easy for us today. It's really easy in 2016 for us to read about the people in the Bible, to read the history in the Bible. And it's so easy for us to sit here and say, what are you thinking? Why are you doing this? What's wrong with you? Why didn't they trust God like they were supposed to? It's very easy for us to think that. But let's get honest, okay? How many of us do the same kind of thing that Ahaz did? Ahaz was trying to save himself without going to God. Ahaz was trying to be his own deliverer, his own savior, and had put into place a plan to make that happen. What do we say and do? I trust in the Lord, but I believe God will take care of this, but, or how often, I think this is the most often thing we do. How often do we say this? I have a plan, I've put this into place, I've got this all figured out, I've spent time, I'm good, I'm doing it. By the way, God, will you please come and bless what I have already decided to do without going to you first to ask for your help? I think we do that more often than not. And you know what the Lord says? He says to us the same thing he says to Ahaz. No. No. You can't save yourself. You can't fix yourself. You can't make things good and right and perfect, and I will not be an afterthought in your life. I will not be some kind of holy life preserver. that you want to keep off to the side and just pull out when you're drowning. I'm going to come to you, whether you like it or not. I'm coming to you to save you. So to Ahaz, in the reading this morning, what he says, and again you have to look at the context here, look at 2 Kings, look at some other writings in Isaiah. What the Lord says to Ahaz is this: you're saying you're not going to ask me for a sign? I'm going to give you a sign anyway. Again, whether you like it or not. Here's the sign you're getting. There is a girl in Judah who is a virgin now, but she's going to get married and give birth to a son, and he's going to be called Immanuel, which means God with us. Many scholars think this is Isaiah's son. Because Isaiah was married, he had a son, then his wife died, then he got married again, and he had another son. You know what the nickname of the second son was? Immanuel. That's what many scholars think is going on here. And God says, before this child is about 3 years old, the alliance between Israel and this other country that you've been worrying about, this alliance between Israel and this other country that's been pressuring you, is going to be broken. Before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid waste. And wouldn't you know it? This conversation took place in the year 734 BC. By 732 BC, the king of Israel and the king of this other country both died, and that alliance was broken. But then God said something else to Ahaz that was actually very chilling. This is what he says: the Lord will bring on you and your people and on the house of your father a time unlike any since Ephraim broke away from Judah. He will bring the king of Assyria. In other words, you thought you were safe, Ahaz. You went ahead, you made your plan, you didn't consult me. What you did is you made a deal with the devil. And you're going to reap the benefits of that. Assyria is coming, Ahaz. And if you think things are bad now, you ain't seen nothing yet. And yes, it's true, Assyria did come. Assyria did not wipe out Judah and take away the inhabitants into exile. That's true. They did wipe out Israel. And then they did go after Judah, the southern kingdom. And this treaty that Ahaz had made with Judah turned into nothing more than ransom payments to bullies. Think of the giving your lunch money to the bully so he didn't beat you up. Or think of paying off the mafia for protection money. That's what happened. Judah was indebted to the nation of Assyria so they would leave them alone. And Assyria had them right under their thumbs. So what in the world does all that have to do with you and me and Christmas? In our Bible studies on Sunday morning, we've talked a lot about prophecy lately. We've talked about the near and the far fulfillment of prophecy, also called the now and not yet. The near or the now fulfillment of this prophecy from Isaiah 7, from our reading this morning, is the immediate fulfillment. There's going to be a child who's going to be born before he's a toddler. These two kings will be wiped out. That's the near, that's the now fulfillment. The far fulfillment, or the not yet, is Jesus. Here's how it comes to us. Jesus, Immanuel. Jesus comes to us. He comes to break the chains of all the evil that seeks to conquer us. He comes to shatter the hold the devil has on his people. He comes to save us from ourselves. He comes to save us from our plans, from our maneuverings, from our thinking that we have to play games. He comes to remove the fear of wondering if we're good enough, strong enough, or righteous enough to go to heaven by saying to us, no, you're not. But I am. And I'm going to give you my goodness and my righteousness. I'm going to live the life you can't. And I am strong enough to suffer the punishment that I don't want you to have, to die, come back to life, and defeat death itself. And I'm going to do all this because I love you. I'm going to do all this because I am Immanuel, the complete and full fulfillment of the prophecy in Isaiah. I am God with you. I'm coming to you so that one day you can come to me. I am and always will be your Immanuel. And this devil, this enemy, is laid waste. He's done. That's the fulfillment here for you and me. Ahaz thought it was all about him, and he had to figure everything out and have everything under control, God said to him, it's not, you can't, and you don't. And we still struggle with this today, let's be honest. Wanting to be in control, wanting to think we can take care of ourselves in the situations we find ourselves in. And God still says to us, you're not, and you can't, and you can't. So I've done it for you. Just believe. Just accept the gift that's given to you. 1 week. 1 week. We're 1 week away from Christmas. We're 1 week away. This time next Sunday is Christmas Day. We'll be celebrating the birth of Jesus. We're going to rejoice and celebrate Immanuel, that God came to us, and all that's good and right and appropriate and absolutely the absolute right thing to do. The question to ask is, why did he come to begin with? Why did he come? He came to save us. But to save us from what? What did he come to save us to? If he's saving us from something, he has to be saving us to something else. What's he saving us to? That's heaven. As much as I love Michigan, and I do love winter, I know that I'm alone in this, but I love winter. This ain't heaven. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but this ain't heaven. That means he's not done. That means Immanuel is going to have to come again. He's not done. It's not over. We are still living in a time of unfulfilled prophecy. He's coming back. This baby who was laid in the manger is the man who was nailed to the cross and will be the King of Kings and Lord of Lords who comes on the last day to take his people home. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, now the dwelling of God is with men, and he will live with them. They will be his people, and God himself will be their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. He who is seated on the throne said, I'm making everything new. And he said, write these down, for these words are trustworthy and true. Unfulfilled prophecy. We're still living in that time of waiting for Immanuel. He's coming back. He's coming back for all the people who call on their name on his name as their Savior. No more distinctions, no more divisions, no more us and them, but rather we, people of God, who get to go home. He's able to do this. He will do this because he is God. God who has come in the flesh to save his people. So let's pray. Let's go to him. Lord God, how amazing is it to think that while you were answering and talking to King Ahaz some 2,700 years ago about his particular situation, you were also talking about the answer to all of our situations of sin and hell. You were pointing to Jesus. You were pointing to the day when you would take on flesh and bone and come to save us. You are our Immanuel, and you reign, Jesus, forever and ever and ever. While we look forward to celebrating your birth next week, help us to always look forward even more so to the day when you return, and we get to see you face to face. In the meantime, keep us, use us, and release us to be your hands and feet to generations who do not know you. That's in your name we pray it, Jesus. Amen.